Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons.
Extra special thanks to guest lecturer patron Ryan Lilly.
Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video. Hey there, Rulers. Welcome back to Ruler School. This is DMO73 bringing you a feature match this week between myself playing the combo style Gill list. This list was exactly the one that Jean-Paul Klintworth used to win the event in Northfield at Games and Geek, and I'm playing against Josh Furey, who decided to bring a Dino Rush style Scarlet list. Very interestingly enough, Scarlet, in terms of the pairing with Gill, is probably the only ruler who just by herself has the ability to just straight kill Gill, but she does have that weakness of the fact that a lot of Gill stuff targets J rulers, and she only has that 200 defense. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this comes out on top. The combo Gill list essentially has shifted to playing more creatures in the early game, things like Assassin or Leaf Fairy, to be able to chip your opponent down to where a single attack from anything you've maintained on the board, including Gill, with an Ultra Awakening becomes lethal. So we're going to go right in here. First turn, hitting the white leaf to gain up to 4,600 life, and then using it to play the Absolute Awareness with the other greenstone. This is the ideal turn one for this Gill list. You want to be able to grab that single Darkness Stone in a pile of 20 Magic Stones as fast as possible. So then from here on out, Absolute, we always have access to every color we need, and then mill at end of turn. So first turn, hitting that Stone of Dueling, an excellent card, excellent stone for Scarlet because it essentially means that she can pump up twice per Stone of Dueling when she's flipped. Burning the Energize here for black to play Ray the Black Owl. Interestingly, it's pretty strong play in the early game if I don't have a way to remove it, specifically because once it flips over into 0, 1, it's hitting me for a lot of damage, 2, it's a flyer, and 3, it makes it so that I have to spend a lot more of my spot removal to be able to clear things off. I at least have to spend 2 just to be able to clear the 0 itself. Unfortunately, though, not really having a play, but what I do have on his turn, though, is once he's recovered and we get the trigger to try to invert the Ray, I do have the Lorite, thankfully, to at least be able to stop it from turning into a 0 for a turn. Calling that second stone, hitting a Null Stone. Has a couple of Dino Riders in hand. Has a it's gonna swing at me for 5. I say that's fine. Then we play the 2-drop 4/6 Dino that gets bigger if it attacks something. A J/Res or a Resonator. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that damage too. Go down to 37. Going ahead and drawing for turn. I didn't have any other elementals to bird yet. Paying 2, or before the upkeep, I'm going to go ahead and use the blue leaf here to bounce my Lorite back to my hand. This way I can answer the 0 again. And then post recovery, I'll go ahead and banish that blue leaf to cast Insight. So this is a new card that Jean-Paul brought into play. It's a 1-drop spirit magic that lets me draw 2, and then I pick one of those 2 cards, put it in my hand, and put one of the other ones to the graveyard. It's a really good accelerator for the deck, as most of the time you're going to hit an elemental and a spirit magic. Plus, Insight itself is also a spirit magic, so it fuels the ability to recycle Lorites. You see I do have that Ultra Awakening engraved, so I did manage to get the elemental back there using this Insight. We're going to play Leaf Assassin, targeting the Ray. I don't have enough cards in hand to even be able to kill it, so I'm just going to lay down my hand. I just wanted to put a body on board, and he knows one of them is Lorite. So we're going to go ahead and stop it from flipping over again. Ultimately, this would be happening after recovery, but Josh doesn't have anything to do in response to the Lorite cast anyway, so we're kind of shortcutting a little bit, but recognize that Zero's trigger, or Ray flip into 0 trigger does happen after you've recovered, so at the beginning of the main phase. Another Stone of Dueling here. Does have that Scarlet's Vision. Very interesting card to be able to answer Gill, as if you do get the mode off that has Null, it doesn't actually target. Dread Touch is going to swing in here, take the 4. And then he tries to swing in with the Ray. I'll go ahead and try to block that, and then he burns it out of the way, so I still take the 5. Flashes in another Dread Touch. Swings in, I take it as well. Take the other 4 there. At this point in time, I have plenty of elementals in grave, and I really need to answer what he's kind of throwing out, so I'm going to banish to produce 1 floating before recovery. Flip over the Gill, and then banish another elemental. You can use the Ultra Awakening to produce another 2. So I have 3 floating here. I can recycle them and go grab a Spiritual Guidance, which will simultaneously gain me some life and will help me draw into some more cards. Draw 2 and then gain 5. You see I drew into a Leaf Paladin there. So essentially, if I can survive this turn and kind of reestablish myself after this turn, I'm actually in a pretty good shape because Leaf Paladin will help me immediately reload. Ultimately, only have the 1 elemental engraved right now, which is probably enough with the Leaf Assassin there. I also have a Leaf Assassin in hand that is going to be very helpful once I get the Leaf Paladin to resolve. And I have to be able to stop that Ray, the Black Owl as well. So once again, we're going to go ahead and use the 1 to flash to bring back the Ray, or bring back the Lorite, and then in response to the Lorite trigger, go ahead and flash that in. Calling another Stone of Dueling. Starts to swing in with the Ray. And I go ahead and say I'm going to go ahead and go to block. Says that's fine. Dread Touch is going to try to swing into the Gill. Go to block with the Lorite. And then once he's discarded a dinosaur to try to kill the Lorite, we're going to go ahead and use the Arrival of the Hero to kill the Dread Touch. So I wanted him to kind of use more cards his own way. And then once he swings in with the other Dread Touch, I can banish the Leaf Assassin that's in the grave to produce 2 green. Go in and grab a Chant from my grave, or deck, and go grab a 5th element. I've got that 2 floating green and I can target it. And I do have Assassin and Paladin in hand, so it's enough to kill it. So keeping Gill alive, clearing the board, and essentially establishing myself really effectively. Unless he has a Swiftness creature here, which I'd be in trouble. But he just has the dinosaur, the Resonator that gets him a dinosaur from deck when it comes into play. It's a 7/7, doesn't have Swiftness, so thankfully did manage to survive the turn there. And next turn I'm really going to start to be able to push things back in my direction. Playing a Leaf Paladin immediately refuels the hand. I can call Stone safely with Gill if I want to, and then play a Leaf Assassin on top of it to kill the 7/7. The one thing in this matchup now that Gill is flipped that I have to be aware of is I always pretty much have to have some way to be able to kill Scarlet if she flips. Ultimately wanting to be really careful there. Best time to kill her is when she decides to swing into Gill, so then she's tapped, which would essentially lock Josh out of having a call Stone for the turn. But the other thing is too is she isn't perishable, so I have to be able to kill her every single turn. Leaf Paladin gonna come down here and help me refill the hand. You see I do have a 5th element there in hand. So we're gonna have the Assassin come down here, target, and we know I have the 4. I can just reveal the same 4. And deal 8 damage. Pitching to gain 6 life. And then swinging in for 11, taking him down at 29. At that point in time, passing the turn. So this is a little bit risky. However, he has so many cards in hand after draw that it's pretty much impossible for him to clear them all out of his hand in order to be able to play Scarlet this turn. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable. Calls for Stone. It's a Stone from the Dark Castle. He does have that Dino Rider in hand, and he looks like he did draw into a Dark Impact. So he pays 4 here, and he's going to try to kill the Paladin, and then he gets to cheat in a Dinosaur. I see that's fine. The Dinosaur that he's cheating in is Dino Rider. So this is actually a really solid play, so I'm kind of at risk here. I don't have a way to be able to necessarily answer that card. The Dark Impact is going to kill, and then the way Dino Rider works is Dino Rider deals the damage to every Resonator on the board, and then if Dino Rider's damage killed something, he gains Swiftness, or something that he dealt damage died that turn, he gains Swiftness. So I'm actually going to make a very interesting play here to keep my Gill alive, which is where I'm going to banish an Elemental. He just let me kill one. So I have 2 floating, and I'm going to cast 5th Element, targeting my own Assassin, and then killing it. So that way, it's not going to take any damage from the Dino Rider, and therefore Dino Rider doesn't get to gain Swiftness. So my Gill gets to survive for the turn. Also not having anything else to do there, so he has to just kind of pass the turn. You see, he does have, like I said, that Scarlet's Vision. Could potentially be very dangerous. Or it is a quick cast spell, and so now that I'm kind of recovered, I probably have access to things like Fair Spell, and I always have the access to, if I need to, the Gill searches. I'm gonna go ahead and call Stone with Gill here. Or I think about calling Stone with Gill here, just based on what's in hand. Because I'm thinking about how I'm gonna answer a 14/14 that can try to kill the Gill. So you have access to Black Leaf, Blue Leaf, and Red Leaf. Fair Spell as well, and it looks like I have the 4-drop Gill in my hand. Gill Lapis, the Inheritor. So just because that creature is so large, it's definitely something that I have to play around with here, because it's also not safe for me to swing against it since I've already used my Arrival of the Hero. If I had a second one, then this would probably be a lot better, because I could just swing, and if he tries to block it, then I can just Arrival it out of the way and hit him for another 1,000, or hit him for another 1,100. But I have to be really careful here. The other play line could be to play Black Leaf and then swing. And if he decides to block, then I can sacrifice the Black Leaf. He does have cards in hand, though, so he could always just burn one card immediately after me casting the Black Leaf, kind of like forcing the play and then not blocking, and it creates a weird scenario. So it's actually better off probably in my hand. So using Absolute Awareness here and then calling Stone, because I want to have 1 will open, and I can play the Gill Lapis, so I can access to 2 will. I do change my mind on that, though, and decide to go for the Black Leaf play, which I think is a little bit incorrect, knowing that if I'm not going to swing with Gill, this is probably going to immediately get killed. And you're going to see that there. Yep, he's going to swing. He's going to burn a card from hand to try to burn the Black Leaf off. Thankfully, though, I still have that Lorite, so I can cancel it, and the Black Leaf will persist until his turn. So now I'm going into his turn. I can make the Dino Rider not be able to kill Gill, because it'll only be 1,000 attack to Gill's 1,100. I have 3 will to be able to answer any cards that he might play, and I have a Lorite to be able to block, if necessary, force even more cards to go away from his hand. The trick is, though, he does, and thankfully I do have access to Red Leaf here, so if he does, burn everything out and try to flip, I do have Red Leaf to be able to kill. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable here, but ultimately it's still not necessarily a winning game state, it's just a surviving game state that helps me get to the next turn. And next turn I'll be sitting on 7 stones if I call for stone. Josh deciding to call for stone here, hitting another null stone. We're going to see the attempted burn of Blackleaf, which we're going to banish to give the Dino Rider -4. So it's only 1,000. Paying 2 to cast Null Darkness. I don't know why you don't just hit to the card instead. Maybe to make sure that it gets killed in case I have another Lorite. But I'm gonna go ahead and Ferrous Spell that. Now at this point he only has 3 will. So if he does want to go ahead and swing and try to use that Scarlet's Vision that's at his hand, I can still block with the Lorite if necessary. Or no, because it'll kill the Lorite. So. End of it. I think he just passes the turn there. Banish to produce double green. Deciding on if I want to do anything with it at the end of the turn or just banish it to have it floating. So that I have another elemental and can go to another search on my turn. Easier. Just moving to my turn though. That's one of the things that's complicated about Gill is you kind of always want to be fueling the RFG pile. Always kind of making it so that you always get to having multiples on your turn. He starts to cast Scarlet's Vision here. It doesn't actually work in this timing. It has to be something that's attacking. So I get to pump up the Lorite here and keep him safe. But yeah, with Gill, you kind of always want to be on even number of cards removed from play on your turn so that during your opponent's turn, you can also get a search and then it kind of bounces back and forth. So you always want to be able to have like 2 turns worth of searches in a row. Now that I'm feeling pretty comfortable here, having the excess will, I'm going to go ahead and play the Gill Lapis Inheritor. And he can also help fuel my resources. Have 2 floating will, use one of them to cast that Insight in hand, get to draw, send another card to grave. See, I only have 3 removed at this point in time, so I'm going to go ahead and search. As long as I can get rid of another... decide not to. As long as I can get rid of another elemental from graveyard during his turn, I can get a search during his turn if necessary. But instead I'm going to say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and wait. I don't necessarily need to search right now. I'll save it so when I absolutely need to. So I'll swing with the 300 Strength Lorite. He says, that's fine, I'll take it, down to 26. Now I also know that the Scarlet's Vision is there in hand. Josh is still very much in a position to be able to flip Scarlet next turn if he just burns 2 cards from his hand, the 2 cards from his hand after his draw when he flips. The problem is, again, he knows that I have Red Leaf, and so Red Leaf just immediately kills Scarlet. Thinking about whether or not to call stone, whether or not I feel safe enough to call stone. 3 cards in hand looks like Assassin, Blue Leaf, Red Leaf. So at that point in time, I'm actually just going to go ahead and pass. Nothing during the upkeep here. Decides not to burn the cards. The only thing he could target would be Lorite anyway, so we'd have to burn both before upkeep just to target the Lorite, which I'd probably just bounce back to my hand. even if I didn't need to, I could just bring it back. I have enough Spirit Magics engraved. That's the weird thing about this deck, is once it gets to, because of how it's been built now with like the insights and stuff like that, once it gets to having like 1 or 2 Lowrites engraved, it probably just never runs out of Lowrites. Wanting to check Graveyard here just to see exactly how many cards that he might be dealing with from Grave. But in terms of what can recover, there's a Howell, which he can cast that for 2 to be able to kill the Lowrite. So that's fine. Now he does have the will here to be able to cast the Scarlet's Vision and flip Scarlet. Ultimately, the Scarlet's Vision can't target anything that I control, but it will be, actually it's null, so it would be able to actually get the effect of just being able to clear my board. The problem is then he has to deal with the fact that I'm Gill, so I definitely have access to a search. Swings in for the 14. See, that's fine. I don't have anything in response to that. Goes to cast the Scarlet's Vision. And at that point in time, we're going to go ahead and search. Trying to see exactly how this card works in terms of if it's an ability, like this card gains, this does something. Because if it's that, then I can lowrite it. But it's not. It is just an effect that all happens when it resolves. So I'm going to go ahead and search for the Fair Spell. And we're going to go ahead and stop that from happening because it is instant speed. So we can just use the Fair Spell here comfortably to stop the Scarlet's Vision from resolving. And then I'm just going to take the cool 14 damage from the Dino Rider and go down. At that point in time, we're going to see Scarlet flip. I don't necessarily know why he didn't just decide to call Stone here rather than flipping Scarlet. He knows I have Red Leaf in hand. Maybe it was just to actually put her into play. But either way, even if she swings, she gets killed by Gill or Gill Lapis, or sorry, she gets killed by Gill, or I can find a way to get an elemental to grave, or if I already have one, make it so Gill Lapis actually kills her instead. Taking a look to see if I have any elementals engraved right now, and I do not. So I take advantage at the end of the turn here. Need to get one in there so that I have access to a search on his turn. And this is actually pretty much game. I can burn the Red Leaf to kill the Dusk Girl. And then get a search off that way. Kind of talking things through in terms of how I want to use the end of my turn here. He did decide to swing. And we're going to block with the Gill Lapis. I think we just burned it. I'm a little bit unsure about how that exactly executed. Paying 1 to bounce my Lorite back to my hand just to get an elemental into grave. Searching the 2. That point in time, I could go grab an Ultra Awakening and use the 2 floating to cast it on Gil Lapis, who will swing for a grand total of 3,100 in the air, which will finish off game 1. And so with that, we move on into the second game. As we go into the next game, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell down below so you're notified when all of our videos goes live, and consider supporting the channel by being a member here on YouTube or by checking it out on Patreon for all the cool exclusive perks that come with supporting us. Thank you guys so much. Let's go to the next game. So game 2 here, Josh choosing to put me on the draw. Not entirely sure if that's the best decision against Gil. He might be thinking that he just wants to go as fast as possible. So the idea being that if he puts me on the draw, he can just like play something turn 1, play something turn 2, and just get really aggressive. Force me to flip into a suboptimal position, and then maybe even flip over Scarlet and be able to kill Gil right off the bat. Calls his first stone, another stone of dueling. Ultimately, you did see he has that Majin Dark Elf in opening hand, but he's not going to be able to do anything because he didn't hit the null stone. Pitch to gain 6. Use it to cast Insight. Have to send a Spiritual Guidance because I don't want to lose the arrival of the hero. Then an end of turn milling, and thankfully hitting a Gentle Breeze Elemental, so I at least still have an Elemental in the grave to work with. Not seeing a Paladin, really unfortunate in the opener, especially since I'd be able to cast it this following turn pretty safely. The raid comes back down again. Banishing 1 and paying 2 to cast the Spiritual Guidance from hand. Really just wanted to draw some cards here. Gaining 7 life. Once again, still not seeing a Leaf Paladin, but thankfully milling another Gentle Breeze Elemental, so I still have an Elemental to work with. So this is a pretty solid position for Josh. If I don't have a Lorite here to be able to flip the 0, it's going to be able to start going, flipping over and putting a lot of pressure on me very quickly. And he's also going into a potential with the Null Stone of having a Majin Dark Elf kind of brigade that Gil can't really answer on his front side. On his backside, it can be a little bit easier, especially knowing I already have a rival of the hero. But this is a pretty suboptimal position for Gil to be playing in. A little bit of a scene transition there. Just had to kind of stop our match and take care of something else there. Thankfully, I do have the Lorite. I have to energize to be able to stop it. Calls his stone. Stone from the Dark Castle, getting a mystery counter. He has another couple Dark Impacts there, couple Dread Touches. Looks like a Welser as well in hand. Swings in for the 5. I say that's fine. Go down to 48. Burns himself for 2. Down comes that Majin Dark Elf. He's going to swing in. I say that's fine too. Go down to 42. And then we see the Dread Touch with it for another 4. Takes me down to 38. So this is the kind of position that Gil just does not want to be in. It's a wide board. Gil hasn't flipped yet. I don't really have access to a lot of my Leafs. You see there is a Paladin there finally, but Paladin by itself is not really going to do much right now. Casting another Insight, hopefully seeing if I can maybe draw into a 5th element. That would be really optimal right now to be able to cast Leaf Paladin into 5th element. So I can at least answer the Ray before it gets out of hand. Do decide to go ahead and play the Leaf Paladin here. I don't have access to the 5th element, but at the same time, this gets me access to White Leaf to gain a little bit of life, and lets me pitch some other elementals to grave to kind of cycle a little bit more. So I can pitch to gain 6. I can pitch the Wind Blade from hand. I can pitch a couple of the other things here. So a 5th element, you know, once I actually get one, is particularly a ton of damage. You see I'm probably going to ditch the Ruin Story here, gain 6 life there. In the discard, probably going to pitch the Ruin Story because I haven't seen an Absolute Awareness yet, and so that's just not really doing much for me at this point. Windblade is a potential save, but it's also an elemental, so it's kind of worth discarding. And I decided to actually discard the Gil Lapis as well, specifically because I could buy it back with Ruin Story later, but also at the same time, like, I haven't seen an Absolute Awareness and I'm getting pressured with a lot of damage, so it doesn't really make sense for me to save that 4-drop in my hand if I have to discard due to hand size. Ultimately, that Ray is finally going to get to flip over. Don't have any extra will to be able to cast a Lorite. Weirdly enough, this does actually set it up for being a 2-punch combo for only 2 will. I can target it with literally any of the other leaves, like a red leaf, and then use blue leaf to bounce it back to his hand because it's technically a 0 cost now. But still, that's pretty suboptimal. So, block with the Lorite. Doesn't even try to burn it out of the way, says that's fine. Block the Majin Dark Elf. Burns himself for 2 to play another Majin Dark Elf. Swings from me to 6, takes me down to 38. And has another Dread Touch to take me down to 34. This is a really, really wide board, and then swings at me for 8 there, takes me down to 26. This board state, especially with a 0 flipped, is very comfortable for Josh against Gil. If I was playing the Gil that runs in the sideboard, you know, they sometimes will tech a couple of light sources to be able to play Crippling Light to kind of nuke the board that way. But ultimately, staring down a lot of problems here. Gonna pretty much be forced to flip Gil at this point, just to be able to answer everything that's currently on the board. So I go the 3 floating will here. Going to go grab a 5th element because I absolutely need it right now to be able to start clearing this board state. Or apparently grabbing Absolute Awareness. Thinking about it, I guess. Yeah, deciding Absolute Awareness isn't really the best option right now. It's a little too slow. I need to get this board cleared right now, and I already have an Arrival in the hero in the hand. I have access to currently 3 floating will. And so grabbing a 5th element with all the elementals that I have in my hand. I can also grab Spiritual Guidance. Personally, I think the best choice, even looking at myself in hindsight, would be to grab the 5th element here. Then I could use the floating will that I have to target the 0 with, say, that Winds of Vitality, and then 5th elemented and do all kinds of stuff. But instead, I'm just going to go ahead and gain all that life and get all those cards back to my hand. Discarding an Absolute Awareness, a Ruin Story, and I believe an Insight. Going to his turn. And then before recovery, what we're going to do here is we're going to produce another 2 floating using the Wind Blade. We got 2 floating wind here. I can use Winds of Vitality for 1 target to negate it, and then use the Arrival of the Hero to then kill it now that its little bubble has been popped. He's going to go ahead and take advantage and use 1 card to discard to burn it himself, just to empty his hand out a little bit as well. Go searching with Gill, still in the upkeep here. Grabbing a 5th element. Using the 2 floating will here, I can target the Majin Dark Elf. He knows I have at least 2. And then unfortunately the other, so that used up all the floating will here, and we go into his turn. So I at least cleared a couple things out, and I don't mind taking the damage from what he might be slinging here. It is a little bit risky here though, because if he had 1 more will there and could have burned 1 more card, he actually could have killed the Gill this turn. He would have had enough will to be able to burn the 2 cards in his hand, or burn the 3 cards in his hand, flip over Scarlet, and give her fire breathing to be able to kill the Gill. So it's just going to swing in here with everything. I say okay. He swings in with the first 2. Takes me down to 26. If he swings in with the 3rd one, he knows it's probably going to get blocked by Gill. So instead, he's just going to go ahead and play the Ray. And then passes the turn back to me. So still definitely feeling the crunch here, due to the fact that there's just so many Resonators on board. And I'm constantly having to deal with the fact that there's Scarlet too, and just not having the will. Thankfully, I can grab the Absolute Awareness here, grab the Darkness Stone, and kind of ramp up, and then use Gill to swing at the Majin Dark Elf for the Dread Touch, or kind of clear off the board a little bit more comfortably. See, I have 3 elementals in hand, so a 5th element can pretty much kill anything on the board, and I do have access to a search here. Searching for that 5th element. So the question at this point becomes what exactly to attack. Definitely want to attack something, because I have access to, again, probably keep myself safe, having access to Black Leaf. Nothing really is going to be able to swing at me with Swiftness, based on what's in his hand. Even if it is, I have searches available. Really want to be able to clear this board right now. Probably the best answer is to hit the Majin Dark Elf, and then use the 5th element on the Ray. The problem is that does open me up to the Dread Touch play. Ultimately, though, deciding to just pass the turn. Keep myself safe for 1 more turn to see if I can come up with something. Josh looking at that Welser in his hand, thinking about maybe casting it during the upkeep. Josh wanted to check my graveyard here. He does have the Lorite and plenty of Spirit Magics in grave. So a Goddard Welser is probably not going to be successful. Actually deciding to, apparently we're still discussing whether to end the turn there. Do decide to swing for the Dread Touch. Says that's fine, I will let that die. And passing the turn there. At the beginning of his turn, he's going to go ahead and Goddard in the Welser. Oh, I catch that he was going to do it at the end of my turn, but recognize you can only Goddard for that card at the beginning of, during your own turn. So it's his turn. I'm going to let him draw for turn first. See, he drew into that Null Darkness here. We are going to see the Goddard into Welser. See 3 Spirit Magics brought out here to bring back the Lorite. And then cast it. So the Welser goes back to his hand because the Goddard doesn't resolve. Burns himself for 2 here to be able to burn the Lorite out of the way. Puts it back in the grave. This actually works out really well for me. Because now that the Lorite is back in the grave, I can actually just bring it back again and stop the trigger from the Ray. But instead, I just have actually access to the 5th element, so I'm just going to go ahead and kill it straight out. So I'm going to pay 1 here. Pitch to kill the Ray so that it will not successfully invert into 0. So then what I can do here is I can pitch the black leaf or the blue leaf, really, probably the black leaf, to kill, to do a minus when one of them swings into the Gill, so that it will die and Gill will take less damage, and then use that elemental to banish to produce 2 green, go searching for another 5th element, and use the other 2 elementals to kill the other attacker, essentially protecting the board that way. Doing a little cleanup in terms of organization on what cards have removed what cards. Decides to hard cast the Welser here. I don't have an answer for that right now, unfortunately, so that is going to resolve. And you see the only card, in, again, a 14/14 body is not something that I want to have to deal with. We're going to go ahead and go, now that he's tapped out, we'll bounce the Majin back to his hand. Josh playing very smart there, not to swing in. You know, he goes to a combat and then, you know, probably was, if he swings with the Dread Touch first, then he gets punished there. If he swings with the Majin Darkness first, then he's a little bit safer. But also, because he just then doesn't have to attack with the Dread Touch at the Gill, he can just go face, just do it this way. So, yep, hits me down to 2200 life. He's got 2 cards in hand here. Go to my turn. So really having to think about this a lot because of that 1400 Gill. I don't really have a way to get rid of it right now. paying 1 for a Gentle Breeze Elemental here, drawing a card, then using that Gentle Breeze to then cast an Absolute Awareness to get another stone. Start to swing at the Dread Touch. The problem here is that I don't play a second Winds of Vitality in the main, and these are just main board games. If I had a second Winds of Vitality here, this would be completely safe, because if he does go to block with the Welser, then I just use Winds of Vitality and kill it. But ultimately, because I already had to use the Winds of Vitality earlier in the game to be able to deal with the 0, that's not an option right now. I've also used my Arrival of the Hero, which also means that I just don't really have a good, clean way right now to deal with that Welser. Now, what I could do here is play the Black Leaf from hand and then swing. So if he blocks, then I can just do -4/-4 to it, and then it's a 10. But ultimately, I don't think I see that at this moment, so I'm going to actually go ahead and search with Gill. Just gonna go ahead and grab another Gentle Breeze Elemental, start to think about it, decide to grab an Insight instead. I think this is actually a little bit of a misplay here. My thought is I get to look at 2 cards and pick which one I want, as opposed to 1, and still potentially get an Elemental engrave. It's also getting me a Spirit Magic. The 2 cards I see here are a Gill, which doesn't do anything, and then a Gentle Breeze. So it really just cycled me into exactly what I was going for in the first place. Do have a White Leaf here, so I can pitch to gain some life, which is nice, and do have access to an Elemental on the next turn. I just don't think I'm seeing the Black Leaf summon play, so I call Stone here, and then pass. The proper play line here would have been to cast the Black Leaf. I was going to call Stone, because at that point in time, even if he flips Scarlet, I have it would cost him 2 Resonators to be able to deal with it. I could remove the effect of the stats of the Welser, so the Welser has to crash in. Then I'd have access to Lorites to be able to potentially block the Dread Touch, and then also keep it alive from being burned out of the way, potentially. But even then, it'd be 2 for 1, and then if he'd be out of cards at that point, yes. But then, even at that point in time, Scarlet would still get killed by Red Leaf, and I have access to Gil Lapis. I can go get one, and then at that point in time, I can start winning the game that way. Ultimately, though, kind of drawing dead, banishing the blue leaf to try to draw a card, seeing if I can see into something. It is ultimately just a vanish, and have nothing really else to be able to search for or deal with the Welser, so that Welser is going to get to kill Gil. At that point in time, we're probably going to see a pretty quick scoop of the cards after that point, just because of what is in hand, and Scarlet being able to flip very quickly with a lot of fire breathing potential, with those 3 Stones of Dueling to be able to kill pretty much anything that I play. So talking through things, trying to figure exactly out, what if I can go searching for a Lorite, I'll at least make them work for it, right? So I'll go bring back the Lorite with the Gill, because this is all still before blocks. I'll attempt to cast the Lorite here. Burns it out of the way before we even move to blocks. And it's in this point in time that I think, in seeing the black leaf in hand, recognizing that I could have just done this. While the Null Darkness, the pitch with her is still on the chase, we're going to go ahead and try to bring the Lorite back, cast it again, and then get to go to a block. He has another card in hand, though. He can just burn it out of the way, and at that point in time, the Wellser will kill the Gill, and I will scoop up the game, pushing us into Game 3 of Scarlet versus Gill. So moving into Game 3 here, I am taking the play because I want to be able to do that turn 1 Absolute Awareness, potentially be up on life. Not really concerned about him having that energized because I'd probably see him burn it on turn 1 on something like a Ray or a Dread Touch. Not terribly concerning if I do have the turn 1 Absolute Awareness play. So a turn 1 Windstone. See a pitch to gain 6. Banish it. Ultimately having just an insight there, but it does get me to draw. See a Spiritual Guidance that I have to pitch. And the other card was a Leaf Assassin, so I'm at least prepared to be able to deal with whatever he might be playing turn 1. And then hitting a Gentle Breeze as well, so still getting that Elemental into grave. So a pretty solid start. Don't like to see Spiritual Guidance go on turn 1, but at the same time, because I at least hit an Elemental off the mill, I'm still at least ramping up what the deck is supposed to be doing. Null Darkness Stone here. He decides to cast Look of Corruption. Not something I wanted to see, considering how I actually have a Leaf Paladin in this game. So knowing that he's just going to make me discard the Leaf Paladin, the other cards in my hand being a Gentle Breeze Elemental, a Lorite, and a Leaf Assassin. End of his turn, banishing the Gentle Breeze to draw a card with the Gentle Breeze, and then going into my turn. See, I do have a 5th element there, so once again, if I had had access to that Leaf Paladin during my turn, would have been really, really nice, but ultimately just having to probably pass the turn there. Banishing to just produce, and then milling a card off the top, hitting that Absolute Awareness. The other thing, too, is I don't want to play Resonators unnecessarily because it just gives Josh potential ways to be able to mill all the cards out of his hand, which is definitely not what I want him to be able to do until I'm ready for him to be doing it. See that Dread Touch come down after burning himself for 2, swings at me for 4. I say that's fine, go down to 42. Then pass the turn there. Call Stone. Looks like double 5th elements in hand. I also have access to a Ruin Story. Ultimately just having to pass the turn there. Milling a leaf, white leaf, which is actually really great. So getting a 2nd elemental to grave there is really nice because that means that next turn I can probably flip Gill. Although it's a super early flip, because I have access to 5th elements in hand, it feels really comfortable to do. Because what I'll be able to do is probably go grab a Spiritual Guidance, draw over 7 cards, gain a bunch of life, and then pitch at least 1 elemental so that I can pitch at least 1 elemental so then I can have double 5th element ready to go. Go ahead and choose a Lorite just so he can't get another dinosaur into his hand. Swings with the Dread Touch. Say he won't block with the Lorite. He's debating whether or not he wants to burn his Energize to kill it. Decides to let it go. So at this point in time, he has 5 cards in hand. I don't know what they are, but I'm feeling pretty comfortable that at least with what this current board state is, that Scarlet's not going to be able to flip next turn. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable in the fact of being able to flip on 0 will and just kind of wait and see how it goes. Banishing the one before and after flip to be able to search. grabbing that Spiritual Guidance. Gaining 7, so no discard, unfortunately, and then just passing the turn. So if you notice that card that's second to the left in Josh's hand, Josh actually played this really well, and I don't know if he just plays only one copy of it, or just happened to think that maybe in game 3 he should keep it, or what. But that is actually a forbidden fruit. So if he plays this properly, he can actually just kill Gill this turn. Ultimately, though, it looks like he's going to make a little bit of a misplay, and that is that he plays the Dread Touch for 2, pays 1 black to cast Forbidden Fruit, and that is the misplay here. Playing the Dread Touch at all from hand is actually the misplay here, because now he only has 1 Darkness Will to be able to flip Scarlet, at which point in time she can't kill Gill because she doesn't have access to anything red to be able to pump her up, and I'm just not going to block this turn. I'm gonna go ahead and say that's fine. I will take the 1500 damage. I'll take the 2500 damage if you swing with Scarlet. You're gonna have to discard your whole hand. It'll all get removed from the game. I'm not gonna worry about blocking anything. We missed that the cards in his hand have to be removed from the game there. I think we do actually catch it, but I'm saying I'm fine taking 2500 damage, going down to 24. That Scarlet is not going to kill Gill, and I am ready to rock to punish it on the flip side. I can use Gill to swing into any of the other things that swing into me, and I can have all my will recovered, clear the board, and keep Scarlet from ever being able to attack. And you, Josh, have 0 cards now in hand from here until the rest of the game. And I'll always kill Scarlet in response to her attacking. I'll never do it just before she attacks, so that even if she does die, you can't Judgments again, you lose access to stones. I'm essentially locking him out. So a little bit of a misplay here. Ultimately, the only thing he can do is just to flip the Scarlet. He pretty much has to, otherwise it was a waste of a turn to get to null. So just kind of playing things out of order here, and not being able to capitalize on the kind of outsmarting that he was able to push there. So swinging in, taking me down, 15 damage down to 34. Doesn't even swing with the Scarlet because he knows that Gill will just block it at that point in time. Since he didn't swing with the Scarlet first, which he probably should have done. I'm going to go ahead and call Stone. Feel pretty comfortable there because I also get access to the Leaf Paladin here. So now I can refill, and I've got access to pretty much anything I want. He starts to go kill the Scarlet, and I say, oh, no, we're not going to worry about killing Scarlet right now. Right now, she can't burn things out of the way, so even that card that you draw out of your hand is fine. If you do want to call Stone with it, if you want to swing, you lose access to your call Stone. And I'm feeling really comfortable having been able to draw, so I'll be able to put those elementals, all 4 in my hand. I have access to double 5th elements in hand. And I have 1 will up, so I can even just pitch the White Leaf. Pitch the White Leaf, gain 6. Do double 5th element here to kill the Dino, the 3-drop, and one of the Dread Touches. And then still have 1 will up left over to be able to use the Black Leaf to kill the Scarlet the second she tries to swing. Having to discard at end of turn still. Going to go search with Gill though before I go into the end of his turn. I can grab another 5th element. Arrival of the Hero also works. So actually this turn, if I wanted to, I could kill all 3 of his Resonators and still be able to answer the Scarlet. So it's just a matter of if I do it this turn or wait until the next turn. I already have triple fifth element in hand, even better. Banish to produce double green, fifth element, targeting there, reveal 3. Use the other floating, fifth element, revealing 3 again. And I can just use the arrival of the hero to kill the other one and still have access to Black Leaf plus fifth element on the following turn. Decide to not use the arrival of the hero just yet. It makes perfect sense to save it though, because right now that Dread Touch can't kill Gill, and I have the answer to Scarlet, so it's better for me to save the arrival of the hero just in case he gets something like Dino Rider that I actually can't, like fifth element out of the way comfortably, just to be able to answer that handily. Swinging in with Scarlet. Excellent play here. Swinging it at the Gill. Doing it first means that I have to kind of commit whether or not I want to burn the Black Leaf now or later. I'm going to go ahead and wait for him to consider whether or not he wants to pump. So I'll arrival of the hero, the Dread Touch. Dark Revolution brings back the dinosaur to get him another dinosaur from hand. And I say, you know what? No, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and Lorite that to just keep that. So that's all you were able to get off of that. Looks like he did just decide to swing at me with the Scarlet. If he decided to swing at the Gill, clearly I was going to wait to kill her until after he had burned some will to pump her up. But knowing that the only card in his hand was the Dark Revolution, he just said, I'm going to just go for face. Swinging him for 11. He says that's fine. Take him down to 27. I need to get him down to 25 to be able to make it so that Leaf Paladin with an Ultra Awakening can also kill him. Casting the Leaf Assassin here, targeting the Scarlet. I'm going to show that I have the Black Leaf, just to deal the 200 damage to her, immediately getting her off the board. And then passing the turn there. Hurts himself down to 25, did my work for me. Plays the Majin Dark Elf here, and can then do Judgment and flip Scarlet back over. So, unfortunately for Josh, this is pretty much a position where the misplay kind of cost him the game. Not being able to capitalize on that vulnerability that I gave him by not recognizing the possible Forbidden Fruit play, and just being at so high life means that I just feel comfortable taking the damage that he's going to swing here. I block with the Lorite. Gonna go ahead and do Judgment of Scarlet. If he swings, she immediately dies because of the black leaf, after I get him to spend a little bit more will. He's going to swing. Making sure that she says specifically that she's going to attack. I have no response to the declaration of attack. He's going to go ahead and try to pump her up. Takes himself down to 2,300. And then at that point in time, we're going to say fifth element. Make use of the 2 remaining elementals in hand. So 6 damage to the dinosaur. Caller. And then I can pay 1 and deal the black leaf to kill the Scarlet, getting her off the board. At that point in time, I have an elemental engrave. He's completely tapped out. He just has the Majin that's also tapped out. So at that point in time, I can just go search for the Ultra Awakening, and then we can swing in for lethal. So that is it. We're going to watch it get carried out here. Very close match, coming down to some critical play decisions, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Huge thanks to Josh for being willing to sit down with me and play. It was definitely a lot of fun to play against Scarlet for the first time in a while, as well as play against this as this Gill player, as this Gill list. Super complicated, but a ton of fun. Deck profiles of both of these lists will be up later this weekend, so be sure to check that out. Hopefully we got all those technical stuff figured out, but thank you guys so much as always. Let me know what you thought about the video down below, and until next time, this has been DMO73 saying class dismissed.